Hey, welcome to Breaking Boxes with No Fun Dave. Today we've got a super special guest with us. His name is Bud the Rock. It's Bud Johnson, and I only say it's Bud the Rock Johnson because when I first met Bud, he was not the most healthy, fit man that I ever met.
Pudgy. Pudgy is a good word.
Pudgy is a good word. Pudgy Wudgy was a bear. Pudgy Wudgy had. I don't know. Anyways, uh, and he has undergone not only a life transformation in a good way, but also a fitness transformation, a business transformation, a mental thinking transformation, and he's got a few more gray hairs to prove it. So,
Yeah.
Bud, say hi.
Well, hi, friends. Thanks for having me, Dave. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about all of the random things that you and I already talk about, but in a much more, formalized way. This is going to be exciting.
No, it's just a recorded way. It's not a formalized way. It's just a recorded way.
But you got your hat forward, so yeah, let's make it more formal. Not just kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
That's better, much better. Covers up my gray hair with a gray hat. That figures. No, our conversations typically it's like, hey, do we have a time to chat? And it's like, yeah, I got 10 minutes. Well, an hour and a half later, we're still chatting. Yeah. Anyways, Bud of like 3 years ago, let's call it,
Yeah.
was a typical father. I'm going to use the word typical father. I mean,
Sure.
the box father who,
Mhm.
I mean, you guys have always homeschooled, right?
We've always homeschooled, and we always had a passion to homeschool, and
Okay,
perhaps a naive, homeschool is the only way approach for a while. That's
sure.
evolved for time, but yeah, we're homeschoolers and we love it.
Okay, so, and then he was a wedding photographer specifically. And then, of course, COVID threw a big wrench into all of our wedding photography group gathering kind of business plans, and everybody went different ways. And Bud
Yeah.
decided to go. He heard somebody, what I know, anyways. I want you to fill me in here, but he heard from somebody that you could make money online,
Yeah.
producing products, and using this AI thing you got to learn about.
Yeah.
And through that vessel, he has transformed his life. So give me a little before and after picture, Bud.
Yeah. I think you summarized it really well. Like we had a business that was operating and doing well. As many businesses could be. You could always scale. You could always do. There's different levers, and well, we prioritize those things. And our business kept kind of suffering for that. We were prioritizing the good stuff: family, church, community, like things that you need to do. So I'm always in this entrepreneurial mindset. Like, well, how can I maximize and not let the responsibilities I have fall by the wayside because of these other equally or potentially even more important things? How do these things fit together? And when I was first introduced to this concept of AI, I think AI was born out of like this mysterious word algorithm for a long time. You always whine and complain about it. The algorithm's not for me, or it's not doing what I thought, or it's changed again. We can't do it. And when I heard this new nebulous term of AI, artificial intelligence, and you get the old comic books view of AI and the doomsday approach and the Terminator approach kind of out of your mind ish. We can circle back to that fun chat too. But
Sure.
I heard about, okay, what if this was a tool to help me scale the things that I think are menial, the things that can be scaled, communicated over text. This is pre-image gen. This was just generative text AI. And I was like, man, I've
Yeah.
got a lot of data I can train this on, and in a wide variety of ways: personal, spiritual, family, as a dad, but this business thing. What if there's some opportunity here? So I locked myself in a room, learned everything I could, started implementing that stuff, and I realized this is game changing, not just for me personally, but being able to communicate this to other people in ways that they can actually use it. We're on the cusp of something really, really big. So I went all in, and I think February, March, I really had the conversation with my wife. I was like, I don't think I'm a wedding photographer anymore. I think now I'm going to be more of this educational position where I can leverage other people and my own experiences and help other people in greater ways than just, weren't you pretty on that day? Here's your pictures. Have a good life. It's a little bit more than that.
How many people we photographed who are now divorced? That's like, wow, that was useless.
I will say I have a pretty good now. I don't know if it was me or how I was marketing, but I've talked
Probably
to
your
everybody.
face. Probably
Yeah,
your face.
we can't break up. This guy took the pictures. I think I've only had 2 couples in like 600 divorce. It's unbelievable. And I only know those numbers because 2 of them, one of them was like, the wife got back to me. She's like, hey, I've got this new guy in my life. She was joking about a buy one, get one free. Like, I already bought that. Can you do another one? So
Yeah.
that was that one. And the other one was the guy. He was so excited to be divorced. He was like, I want to have this epic photo shoot to celebrate. We're going to have like fireworks. And I was like, no, that's a little off brand. I don't think I want to go that route.
I can't do that.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I want to know is like, okay, so you went from being having been through the same thing, I was a wedding photographer for 15 years.
Yeah,
Um, there's an identity that goes along with what you do. There's an identity for me, it was being a wedding photographer. And if I wasn't a wedding photographer, what was I? So
sure.
just talk me through kind of your thinking of like going from I am a wedding photographer to I'm going to do something different.
Well, I probably have a slightly different take than most, only because the whole time I was a wedding photographer, if I'm very honest, and that's what these podcasts are for, right? is I was never really proud of it. I was never proud to say I was a wedding photographer. There was always this back of my head, like, maybe it was because I'm the generation that watched The Wedding Singer. Like growing up, it's kind of this business that could have been scaled to something great, but I was just kind of mediocre at it or good enough at it. We
Right.
met all our business quotas, we made our budget, my kids were happy and fed, and we could travel and do our things, but it wasn't like supremely growing. It wasn't like I am changing the world one photograph at a time. And I could go a whole other route and do the salesman approach and make it sound important. But realistically, I always struggled with that, if I'm honest. So leaving, previous careers doing like web development, software development, it felt so prestigious. And then I'm just little old me doing wedding photography. And it was hard. Now looking back with a bit more hindsight, I'm way more proud of it internally. It's one thing to sell it, but to believe it.
Do you think that feeling changed how you handled things in the rest of your life?
Yeah, I would say it's probably a good correlation. I think any guy, and maybe we could take a step back, and any person who's doing something that they're not proud of, then even if they kick the can down long enough, it has a life to it. Like it's going to demise. If you're not passionate about something, then there's no expectation. You'd be foolhardy to expect it to last forever. There's just no passion. Eventually that displays itself. And thankfully, the last people, in fact, they never knew, my clients are never impacted by this, lack of pride or lack of like excitement. Because, that wax and wanes. Everyone has bad days. You go to McDonald's and ask for a burger, chances are that person's having a bad day, and you could tell. But
Yeah.
sometimes they have great days, and you can tell that too. And thankfully, it always synced up where my wedding days were good days. But I know inside, like I could have brought more, I could have done more, I could X, Y, Z. So like part of that was probably a variable in, and the word means so much, a lot of different ways, but it kind of pivoted. Why I wanted to pivot from. And now looking back, it's not really pivoting from, it's pivoting with. So I'm still doing some weddings. I still have those relationships. And I find many of the people I'm helping now are not just future photographers or other business people. It's the 1,200 people I've already served in some capacity that I
Right.
gained so much trust with their wedding in this intimate moment. And they're all of so many different walks of life that they're interested now in my pivot and they want the success for me. And they were proud of me then. And now that there's something more tangible and something that fits within like the paradigm of helping other people, they're even more proud. So it's been really fun to have a new outlook, one on my past, like to have more pride in what I accomplished, but also looking forward, like I can actually really help somebody. And like I said, I can wax and wane about the photographer, how he helps somebody. We're not rocket scientists, but if you put a picture of a couple, a romantic photo in someone's living room, chances are you're going to have an impact on their marriage,
Right.
on their life.
But
So all that
maybe not the big impact that we want to have.
precisely, yeah, not the same tangible way. It's very nebulous. It's kind of intangible or indirect. And now I feel like I've figured out ways to tangibly help somebody and change lives much more dramatically. And just getting right
Okay,
to the heart of the finances.
so then pivot that into you became passionate about something that could help summarize things and help brainstorm with you through AI, and you've applied that to creating homeschooling products. You've
Mhm.
applied that to working out. You've applied that to, I'm
Everything.
guessing, parenting and marriage. I haven't seen that publicly, but I'm guessing that's there too. Touch on that.
Yeah. So the coolest, I mean, literally the very first thing I did with AI was not the business stuff like that. Like now it's consuming me and I love it, and helping people grow with that tool is great. But the very first thing I did was my kids love it when I read to them. I'm sure you're an active dad too. Like my wife doesn't have to put the boys to bed because I love doing it and they love doing it. Like that's our wrestle time. It's our tickle monster time, whatever, your family might call it. It's our time to bond and it's my time to read. And they love all our books and we've burned through so many of them. And I know there's a million more libraries out there to consume great content. But my kids are also so creative that with this tool, I was like, what if we were able to combine their interests with the prerogative of a bedtime story mixed with my morals, my worldview, my goals for my children. And all of
Mhm.
a sudden, AI was able to organize all of those thoughts in a way that made sense. So all of a sudden, I'm cranking out personalized bedtime stories with my kids. They're the stars of the show sometimes, not every time. I don't think that's always healthy, but they're the stars of the show. They're the ones who kind of learn and grow through the story. Their favorite pieces and landmarks and stuffed animals are integrated. And that's not the only thing we do, but it was such a breath of fresh air and excitement. I was like, okay, there's more here. It's not just here's a new tool that you can play around with and grow your business, but here's like a tool that can probably intersect a couple different places in your life.
And
And that
I
was
can vouch for that thought process because we took Bud's idea as well and are currently producing or working on a series of kids
that's
books
awesome.
that my youngest is wanting to do. My other one
Sweet.
is like, no, I want to make stuff for people that's going to make like road trip books. So
Sure,
he's
cool.
off on another tangent, but
I got this book right here. My daughter and I co-authored, and it was a mix between like traveling and telling stories. So we made like ad libs, but it's
yeah,
different landmarks around Savannah, and we used not just generative GPT to make the stories and help her like flesh out her family stories, but we
right.
also used it to illustrate. So we mixed it with. I took her on a tour through like the Louvre, a virtual tour, of course. We didn't go out there, but she picked some of her favorite painters, and we used AI to say, all right, well, what if these famous landmarks that we love and can tell a story about? What if Monet painted it? What if someone else like? And it so
The
we were able to.
direction we're going with ours is one of my disappointments with products available as a parent to your kids is depending on your worldview, depending on how you see truth and where truth comes from. It's difficult to find stories that line up with your worldview that you're trying to teach kids with, and it can be as simple as dealing with how to deal with panic in the right way, or fear, or happiness, or joy, or frustration. It can be um, where did the world come from? Why does the Grand Canyon not have a delta?
Mhm.
All sorts of different things, and so we're integrating those into the stories, and so his characters going around the world to these different places and talking to the national parks guide, and they're
That's cool.
it's so much. We haven't got anything out yet, but
Yeah, yeah,
it's we're getting there. We're
that's
getting there.
awesome.
So, but yeah, no, that's really cool. Sorry, continue.
Well, and I say a lot of times I tell folks is those more personal experiences will allow you to creatively think of ways to use AI in more professional ways. Like not only we could have, and we did. We actually sold copies of every time I speak. I always put a QR code so people can buy the book. We always sell books, and every time Maggie's like, "I guess your conference went great because I made like 10 sales and made $60." Like so it's fun
And
to
it also teaches them business, and it teaches them how
all
to create stuff that's of value. And
all four of my kids are neurotic entrepreneurs. To me, by an order of magnitude, they're schemers.
amazing.
Yeah, they've had a couple lemonade stands every year, every summer. They milk my neighborhood hard for money.
This year we've
Uh,
got frozen lemonade.
yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Oh, dude, we bought an industrial snow cone maker just so they can sell snow cones. And they, they put their money together and involved it all. So
That's
it's
awesome.
but all of these things are like the gateway drug to use something we've all used
Yeah.
or talked about in our youth. It's the gateway drug to more and bigger interesting things. So I tell people like you don't have to use AI to like just solve business problems right now. You can use AI to become a better dad, become a better husband. I need 15 date night ideas. I need them all to be under $100. You put whatever stipulations. You put the what do they call them when you're bowling and you put the bumpers up. You're just
Right.
slide them in a little bit tighter, and you can get that bowling ball to go where you want. Which
And so for those of you who haven't used it and don't know, Bud's talking about like when you go for the first time to chat with GPT, all you see is a chatbot box, and you type in and you think, oh, I'm going to put stuff in like Google and search for something and look for something, but you actually got to use it in a much different way. You got to tell the program what it is that you want it to reply with. Are you looking to summarize things? Are you looking to summarize things through the lens of somebody else or some other body of information? Do you want it given to you with frustration or with happiness or satire or humor? And you can iterate on all the answers that come. So you can say, rewrite this thing that you just gave me,
yeah,
adding more satire, which fits my life perfectly because I mean, satire is my first language, and then English is my second language.
Yeah, there you go. Or make it rhyme like Dr. Seuss. And
or make it rhyme like Dr. Seuss. Like we're literally like just before this podcast, my wife and I were writing up descriptions for the main podcast channel, and it's like, okay,
cool.
Here's the information I want. Now add funny. Now add satire. Now switch out this joke with a different one. And with 3 or 4 iterations, you come up with something that's really good and better than I'm going to write if given an hour to just sit down and write it. Yeah. And so what he's saying is you have to prime the answer that you want it to give you. And that can be done in an individual chat instance, or it can be done with what's called a custom GPT. So you're basically framing that conversation always to follow a certain framework. So it's a totally different way to think. And one of the things that is visually so awesome about it is but I don't know what ideas you gave to GPT on this one, but basically he had GPT send him a workout regimen, which he has then followed, which has way more running than I want to do. But
I asked you for that. Yeah.
But it took Bud from being flubby Bud to being like ripped, jacked, like with given the right circumstances, cover of a firefighter's magazine kind of look. Like Bud's not. What's your height and weight?
I'm 5'9.5". Okay. Sarah always
and a half. See, anybody under 6 feet has to add the half in there.
Yeah. And I float anywhere between like 155 and 165 these days.
So he's not huge, but he's now chiseled. He's defined. And so when he posted a shirt, I'm saying this not because I'm following.
Okay, hang on.
All of Bud's, Instagram. Oh, he doesn't have a shirt on in that one.
Yeah.
But he posted a picture just, showing that you can do something different. You can actually get what you want. And he did it before and after, of course. And it was just like the weight from his belly had moved up into his muscles. The description.
And to kind of talk about like how I did that, it really was, this is before custom GPTs. And just for anybody listening to this, as we stand today, there's this functionality called custom GPTs where you can really set up and create your own version of ChatGPT. And just for more context, GPT, generative pre-trained transformers. If you can control the capital P pre-trained data, you can do incredible stuff with it. So before that, I created individual chats. So in this one chat box that anybody can do, even with free GPT, I filled it out with all of the pre-trained data I want. Here's some popular workouts. Here are some blog posts, magazines from trusted authors, trusted sources. These are some of my personal goals. And I flooded the chat box with those parameters, again, bringing those bumpers in. So the output wasn't, well, here's a healthy workout for a guy. No. I want to grow my biceps. I want to lose fat. I want, here's my age. Here's my current activity level. This is what I want to be. So rather than just saying, make for me stronger, make for me a workout plan, you can be very precise and again, model that off of any sort of topic you want. Like now give me lessons to teach my kids, give me a homeschooling curriculum, give me a syllabus for math or for the Roman Empire, whatever you're educating. But for working out, I gave it those strict parameters. I found some heroes of mine who've also had transformations. I loaded in some of their suggestions, and based on all that data, plus whatever pre-trained data ChatGPT already had access to, created and modeled these workouts that were easy to follow. They were not with some crazy gear. It wasn't like supplements.
Okay, so start to finish, if you were to do that again and know what kind of information you're putting in, what time frame to get an answer that you're looking for, what are you talking about?
So explain that again. So the time frame.
You start typing, you program it, you get the answer that you want. How long are you spending doing that?
So it's really up to you. You can be as quick. I think you could probably get a great output for like a good workout routine in 5 minutes of work.
Okay, so here's the interesting thing. So 5 minutes of typing, you get the answer that you want. Back when I was training to be a professional athlete, which is going back a number of gray hairs ago, I went and I bought 20 lessons with a coach at a gym, which was way more than I wanted to spend at the time. But I was like, no, I'm going to do this. I got to do it right. And so he would go through and gave me basically what you're saying GPT gave you in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And so you actually have to change the way that you think about how you're getting information and how you're
Mhm.
processing information in order to cut the
Mhm.
fat out of your life, and not the physical fat, but just
Yeah.
like the extras. You don't actually have to go to the gym to figure it out. You
Right.
could you could parameter it so you could, it's all calisthenics and all, and you can do it in your office, right? It's
Yeah.
just a matter of setting the parameters for what you have available, and then saying, okay, how can I work within that?
And for my family, because we homeschool and because my kid, like we don't have access to a home gym anymore now that I go to a gym, but I wanted to create a workout for all ages, completely body weight, just what we have in the house. And now I've got a workout plan for me and my kids to continue that stuff. So like, yeah, you can change those boundaries and parameters. You can say, well, and what's really cool is now if you have the pro version, you can literally take a picture of your gym equipment and say, GPT, this is all I have. Can you build a workout based on these things? Like that's the level. So your
This is
5 minute,
all I have. Can you make my face more beautiful?
yeah. What do I do here? That's actually an interesting use case. That'd be kind of interesting. Like, what would you do? Yeah, what work would you have done? Just to see what it did. But
What do you think? Right here, just
yeah, just a
just a
little
touch.
filler here. Yeah,
Just
uh,
gonna.
this way.
I gotta wait. There we go. 1 second.
No problem. Hey, while you're doing that, every now and then we get training and I'll get a low flying airplane. If they go by, I'll try to be quiet so you can cut the whole thing if it makes sense. Otherwise, I don't know if you can hear them or not. I like this mic because it usually cuts it out, but
I can't hear a thing.
okay, good, sweet. We got a
My
few.
fun earlier is I was recording what I want to be the intro sound to my podcast.
Yeah.
We had a bunch of Amazon boxes here, so I was literally jumping on top of the Amazon boxes, which I'm
That's
going
awesome.
to put sound together. I'll make it a bit of a crescendo or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm figuring
Rad.
out okay, let's switch a little bit
Yeah.
to you homeschool. You work from home. You are with your wife all the time and your kids
Mhm.
all the time, as I am.
Yeah.
But you've got like supercharged because you have 4 kids, whereas I only have 2, so I've only have half the experience that you do. I don't know. Give me a picture of your day to day life. What that looks like. Is it filled with joy? Is it frustrating? Is it just like kind of just we go along? What's life
We,
like?
yeah, it's a good question. And we have definitely modeled our life to be more full of joy. I think just like any relationship or situation, you kind of go through periods of ups and downs, of course, but I think we've kind of thought about what we want our life to look like now that we feel like we've had the tools necessary to emplace that vision. So for me, it's super joyful. Now it's filled with interruptions. In fact, I was texting Sarah where I'm filming is in a garage. It's my fancy office. And literally right next to me is our trampoline. So it never fails. Whenever I start talking to somebody, they start bouncing.
And
And I
you're
have
still in Carolina, right? So it's warm in December.
it's
It's about
Savannah now. So it's like 75 degrees today. Yeah. So they're out here jumping and can make noise. So sometimes it's family style, but it used to be the old like hide it, be quiet, let's don't interrupt dad. He's working and stuff. And now it's like no. My whole life is one big family style cacophony. I invite it, and it is part of the identity.
that's a you've rehearsed that one, the cacophony. That's
I've said that a lot in the past, and I occasionally I'll get the looks like, what does that mean? It's kind of my litmus.
are you speaking English?
Yeah. So I try to offer enough context so that the word makes sense if that goes beyond people. But yeah, the noise I have rehearsed, and it's been a mental experiment and one that I have to voice out so that other people are aware
Noise
too. But
canceling headphones are amazing.
yeah,
When you
that's what I
really,
got Sarah for Christmas was some noise canceling headphones. Yeah, and
now,
she,
unfortunately, there aren't noise canceling muzzles for children yet, so maybe we
yeah,
have to figure that out. But
sure, yeah.
um,
But, but no, I mean, life is really joyful. We've definitely built the life we want and are continuing to do that, of course, as more freedom, as you get more freedom, you can do more things that you like.
do you have a
Um,
fair number of people who call you crazy or that look at you like, what are like, why?
used to. I think over the last, so my oldest son will be 12 soon. So of the 12 years I've been a dad, I would say the first 8 were you'd introduce and people were like, "Oh, really? That's what you do? You work at home, you homeschool. We even did home church at our house too. Like everything's there, huh?" And it's not. It's kind of a
Do you have a car
yeah,
or?
right, yeah. So, and I think maybe that was a little bit of we didn't always necessarily tell people promote when we were like doing things and going out in community and stuff. It just wasn't something we shared. Um, so I think for a while, yeah, people looked at us with that classic dog tilt, like, really, that's what you're doing? But now I'll tell you, man, people come out of the woodwork. wanting to know more, like wanting to know how, wanting to know, understand this experience. Because for like instance, homeschooling is the number one growing, education style for children now. And homeschooling inherently, just in the name, it's a domestic approach. Like you're going to teach at home. It means if you've got young boys, boys in particular, I'll speak to that specifically. By their very definition, homeschool is a domestic experiment. You're like domesticating these boys, and you and I both know boys are not necessarily always meant to be domesticated, at least not to the extent that their mothers would sometimes desire. So,
Sure.
as my boys are getting older, I realize I can't be the dad that just provides and lets mom do the heavy lifting. I have to do that heavy lifting too. And I think more of culture is starting to experience that, at least in the circles I run in. So people are like, how can I accomplish that? I've been the provisional dad for a long time, and maybe my wife is burnt out. Maybe she doesn't want to teach. Maybe she's not a good teacher. I mean, that's a real thing as
That's
well.
possible. Yeah.
And so as people come to me with those problems, like, well, maybe the solution isn't like, can you brainwash your wife to do better? Like that's not a solution for relationships or for marriage or family, but rather, how can you be more involved? How can you set that example? How can you get your actual hands dirty with the education? Can you find places where you as a dad can bring in? So again, all of this is powered not just by my own initiative, but also by AI. I couldn't do that if I didn't find some sort of either outsource or in-source tool to facilitate that. Otherwise, I'm just stuck in well, I'll just be the provider. We'll see what happens. Good luck, kids. Good luck, mom. And
Right.
is this a poor emulation of public school? Like all that type of stuff. So getting my hands dirty, realizing that is the joyful part, allows me to not to be the dad, to check the box. Like, okay, I'm not just some stay at home, workaholic.
And I've never asked you this before, so this is a blind answer for me. But out of 10, how would you really rate your relationship with your wife? Assuming she's
Oh,
not watching.
off the charts, the best. Yeah, no, it's the best. And
11.5. No, out of 10.
yeah,
Right? Out of 10.
yeah, yeah. What day of the month is it again?
How hot is she? How would you rate your relationship? Okay.
Yeah.
And what I want to know is, in your estimation, your words, what kind of role? How does somebody communicate well? How does somebody, what have you guys fought through and struggled through and wrestled through to be able to, on a daily basis, live together, work together, homeschool boys together, and still have an amazing relationship?
There's probably a lot of answers to that question. I think some of the most important ones are like, desire comes from a lack of having. So like there has to be some level of separation. Like I need to have something to talk to her about. Like, hey, I did these few tasks today and I moved the ball forward, and this is how we can celebrate, or this is how we can critique and grow and be critical. So there is some level of separation. That's why I'm in my office that is a detached garage. If I could spin the
I'm
camera
working
around without,
in an actual office because I have access to an actual office today. So
yeah,
it's like,
on the other side of that, more importantly than the separation for Sarah and I, this isn't for everybody, but it's the togetherness. So it's funny when we do go separate routes, or if I'm like away for a weekend shooting something or doing something, we're actually usually kind of bumpy when we get back together. It's like ironing out the differences and what happened. What did you do in the last couple of days? And what did I do? And trying to fix that incongruency. So for us, it's been the opposite, like spending even more time together. We go on a walk 5 days a week. We talk for about 45 minutes about anything and nothing. And I think since we've implemented that, our relationship has never been stronger and is on track to blow our minds with how tight and how good our relationship can be in the future. So I think integrating intentional together time rather than the circumstantial together time. Like we're all feeding kids, cleaning up after kids. So we're together, but you're not really together. So our kids are old enough now where we can say, nobody's allowed to die. We're going to go for a walk.
yeah.
If anybody gets
That's
hurt,
a good day, though. That's a good day. The first couple of
yeah,
times, you're like, okay, we're going to leave. Like, we're going to
yes,
not be in the house.
yeah, yeah. So we can trust them to not burn the house down, hurt each other or themselves, and we can have that time. So I understand it's a season. Not everybody's in the season where I can just say, yeah, y'all should go on walks for 45 minutes. Like, well, cool. I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. We can't. Like that someone will die. So I get it. But
But
now that
you can watch a TV show together while they're napping, or
yeah,
like there's something that you can do
yeah,
if you want to do it. And I
yeah,
think that's the key thing is, do you want to?
hmm
And if you do,
and
then go do that. I like to phrase it as good husbands do the things that good husbands should do.
yeah,
in order to be a good husband, you got to do the things that a good husband does. So go
Yeah.
do the things that a good husband does, and then you'll be a good husband.
Yeah.
And it's not magic.
Yeah. Yeah. It really isn't.
No.
But it sometimes takes a guy to say it that obvious. Just as a little tiny backstory, my father died when I was really young. So I didn't have that, like, the guy to teach you to shave, the guy to, these are the things, like, he had early bud, very early bud to kind of get me on
Different
a
than
track.
Flubby Bud. Totally
Yeah. Yeah.
different than his
Yeah.
early bud.
And now that I am, obviously much older myself now, from then, I realized, my dad was figuring out too. He didn't have the best dad either, and he wasn't doing the best. And he died young, and boom, that was all he had. So for me, it was a lot of trial and error. And some of that you want for your kids. Like, my wife said something really insightful once. She was like, trying to understand how I'm so, like, DIY, and I just figure things out. I'm like, well, if we need a new light, I can figure out how to install a light. And she's like, I would never even try that. And she, I think, very astutely put it like, oh, it's because you didn't have a dad. You had to figure everything out yourself. And if that's what I want my kids to do, then I have to intelligently not do everything to let them rise to that occasion. So there's always these pros and cons, plus and minuses of, like, can I be intentional? Maybe that's the crux of it. Can I be intentional? So if you want to have a better relationship with your wife, then you have to be intentional. And I can't tell you, better than any present I've ever given her is me carving out the time and texting her, are you ready for our walk? Like, she's always happier than any present I've ever gift wrapped for her is to go on those walks. And that's not, I'm not trying to brainwash her and convince that the case, but it just genuinely is to have, for your wife to feel like, oh, he wants to spend time with me. That's the easiest cheat code in the world, man. Like,
Stepping back one sentence there to the end of the parenting part, do you find yourself creating experiments for your kids and, like, just kind of throwing them in and seeing how they respond to things? It's like we call them training sessions.
Yeah,
and right. Have breaks from the time that they were young. It's like, okay, well, he's crying when they're going to the grocery store. Okay, sweet. Well, let's go to the grocery store and not buy anything, but we'll put stuff in our cart and just wait for the situation to happen and then fix the situation. Well, as we've gotten older, we've continued to do this, and as you're saying, being intentional about it, it's like, okay, well, both of them are the ones struggling with, panicking at response. It's like, okay, so let's get him in a situation where he has to panic, or he's going to panic, and then fix it, and then try it again, and then fix it, and then try it. It's just thinking, Esther.
Yeah. No, it's very, it's very psychological science. Like, some sort of exposure allows them to not be so stressed when it happens. And again, from a homeschool perspective, like, it is a very domestic experience educating at home. So then how do you take these educated kids and turn that knowledge into wisdom? And that's going to come with experience. And if I can be the parent, and that's what, our worldview encourages, like, you be the parent, not the state, not the person down the road. You're not outsourcing that. You've got them.
Would you then say that there is a hierarchy within your family?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's. I know that word has a lot of negative connotations, but yeah, without some sort of
frame it positively. Hierarchy in business. Why can't there be hierarchy in family?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, without a structure, if the CEO of a business walks in and there's trash on the floor, it's the janitor's job, not the. Sure, the CEO could do it, but you're right. There's a hierarchy,
but it doesn't make the janitor any less more important as a person. Yeah. But his role within the company is different than the CEO's role, and so then the benefits and the responsibilities are different as well. In our house, our kids are not in charge.
Right.
There has to be the hierarchy that we are in charge. We can discuss who's in charge between Sherry and me, but our children are underneath, and very distinctly underneath, and they have roles and they have limits and they have things they can do, freedoms they can have, and freedoms they can't have. You don't have the right to run out onto the road in front of a bus. That's right. And you have to have that in place in order to be able to go on a walk by the time they're 8 or 9 or 10, 11, 12.
Yeah. Especially in Savannah.
For us, it was a lot earlier. But
yeah. But in Savannah, if you run off, you can be eaten by a gator. So yeah, we were.
I suppose that's not something we worry about in Canada.
Yeah.
Or kangaroos kicking you. That's another thing that we don't concern ourselves. Now, getting frozen in a snowstorm, that's a real problem. Cool. Okay, well, let's talk about faith for a second. We're both followers of Jesus. Where does your story start from?
Man, that's another good question. I think it's probably rooted. Was that me or you?
That was me. It was an absolutely nothing message that notified.
Yeah, no sweat. That's a really good question, and it probably starts with the story of my dad. Like having that existential crisis so early, you try to find out what is life. Like, boom, the most important person in your life is taken from you, stolen in a way, in a very dramatic, painful to watch way. And I think at that inflection point, I was 13 when he passed. Like that's pretty crucial time. I mean, I think you could argue a lot of crucial times, but 13 years old is unique for a boy. And so there were a lot of crossroads. Like, well, which route do I want to go? Do I want to go the hedonic please myself route? Is there more to life? Am I trying to help others? You know, is it something spiritual? Is it something community? Is it a church? Is it my family? And you just kind of work down the list of where you find that meaning. And for me, I found meaning in the church. I found the demographics that could continue to guide me, the people that could train me to train others. And I found meaning in that. And I think for a long time that resulted in pursuing the meaning, and then it turned into pursuing like doctrine. What do I want to believe? The specifics of what I want to believe. Then that kind of trickles down into what worldview, what friend group, what society, like all those. What is my family going to look like? So for me, faith wasn't necessarily the response like, oh, I've done something terrible and I need a God who saves me. And I think that's sufficient for a lot of people. But it was even maybe another level, a meta level to that is I want to be a responsible human. I want to find how I can do that most elegantly and most rightly, correctly, righteously, serving the most amount of people. And I found that having faith.
Well, that brings up so many interesting questions. Now, for those of you who don't know, the foundation of what I'm going to call biblical Christianity, or following what Jesus actually said in the book that he wrote for us to read, being the Bible, there's a lot of surface stuff that people know of or see. It's like, oh, you're supposed to love other people. You're supposed to do what's right. Well, how do you determine what's right? Which raises a whole bunch of other questions. And so to think that the faith of Jesus is so outside the box, it's ridiculous. To give you an example, it says, if you're wrongly accused of something, if you're accused rightly of something and you take it well, that's just expected. Mm-hmm. But if you're wrongly accused of something and you take it well, then that's acceptable. And it's that same kind of idea that it's not about you. It's about everybody else. We already spend enough time on ourselves. Let's focus on everybody else. You love your neighbor. Who's your neighbor? Well, everybody. But it goes so much further than that, because if you claim to believe the Bible, there's a whole bunch of things that are written in there that are hard to understand based on our society today. For instance, it says that the world was created 6,000 years ago. It says there was a giant worldwide flood that flooded absolutely everything, even the top of Everest that wasn't there at the time, 4,400 years ago. And then those waters receded down into the now sunken ocean beds. It says that the ice age happened after that. It says that dinosaurs walked with man. It says, like, there's a whole bunch of things that if you're going to say the Bible is true, like, it's an entire worldview of out of the box. So when you say, okay, well, I want to do what's right, it's like, well, how do you know what's right? Well, it's because the guy who made me told me what is right. If there are rules, there has to be a rule giver. If there's design, there has to be a designer. And so, we're touching incredibly on the surface of this, but it's a lifetime pursuit of what is truth. Where does it come from? Are we alone? What is the purpose to us being here? What? So this is foundation for 37 other episodes of podcast.
Yeah, sure.
But Bud's very gentle response into doing what's right and faith is just the tip of the iceberg. So, anyways, that's interesting. I would like to ask you about how you go about your thought process of taking big leaps. You've taken several of them in life, starting with the one that was forced upon you with losing your father, and then since then you've gone from a normal job of building websites to shooting people in the photographing people, and now to digital products and AI and training people how to use different tools to further their business and life and all that kind of stuff. I would like to just hear your thought process behind how do you go about thinking through that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and that's a real big question. I think it's probably oscillates between the serial entrepreneur, always chasing the latest distraction and thinking you can solve a problem. And like a balance that to these are real problems. I'm finding real solutions, and now is an appropriate and responsible time to pivot. And I think that's really a very common struggle to any entrepreneur in any
Can you say that again in simpler terms?
life where I want to push their health and fitness valuable. And I say that now as somebody who is healthier, like that's ridiculous. But as someone who lived 35 years of my life completely unhealthy, I get it. It's not a priority. It's not a decision. But I had to make that inflection point where no longer this wasn't a vanity pursuit. Oh, I wish I looked, felt better. But now it's like, I want to be the healthiest version of myself so that I can continue to provide for those I love and
Okay,
even
so you're
people I don't
weighing
love.
the outcomes and then basically saying this is the benefits of one, this is the benefits of another. Pick one and go.
Yeah. So a
It's
lot of
very
those
very decision based.
yeah, and some of the transformations they could have been reactive only. Like this thing happened to me. My dad died. What am I going to do now? And that's kind of like a reactive position. But even at a young age, it's like, well, now what do I do with this information? Do I grow from it? Do I get hurt from it? Do I sweep it under the rug and swallow it down and pretend it never happened? Like, there's a lot of different routes you can go. And so I think even like a career development, like, okay, I struggle with the lack of pride in what I did. The marketplace was changing. Do I just like old guy curmudgeon lean into the gray hair and say the world is not worth my time and get grumpy, or do you pivot? And judging that ROI, it really, I mean, not only is it an opportunity to learn and grow, but it's an opportunity to show what you've learned and have grown into. So a lot of my inflection points weren't reaction; they were kind of more calculated. Like, okay, it's time now to do X, Y, and Z. We've run into this situation. We have to make a decision, and things have to get better or worse. And
Do you
that's
now
kind of
see your children in phases? Like, okay, you're done little kid phase. You need to level up and aim towards
yeah,
new phase. I mean, you're
mm-hmm.
2 years ahead of us on the top
Sure,
end, but like right
yeah,
now, it's like, okay, now I got to start pivoting towards making you an adult. Like, it's not,
yeah,
we always aimed a few years ahead of where they were, but now it's like,
mm-hmm.
okay, so now you have to understand how to handle emotion in situations. You need to understand what responses are right. You need to choose what target you want for the,
Yeah,
what kind of person do you want to be seen as. So
mm-hmm.
I'm assuming you see the same sorts of things.
Yeah. My 12-year-old in particular, or almost 12, he excuse me, he I feel like on a very objective, it's hard as a parent to view it that way, but on an objective perspective, he's very unique and mature in a lot of different ways with his talents, with his abilities, and his capabilities of understanding and communicating. And that's a brand new thing. And it really does feel like I've got this man, not child, but man on the cusp of like almost a peer in ways. I don't know. Everyone's different, but having like the birds and the bees talk with him, like being able to now we've lifted the veil. He understands some things that have been kept from him intentionally and on purpose, and
Sure.
deliberately kind of leaked out at right times. But now that like there's this level of understanding, and so he is entering a new phase where he'll always be my son, but he's also growing into my friend, growing into my partner, growing into this man that I'm going to rely on soon. So it's fascinating watching him not just grow in physical stature, but change the whole paradigm of our family of this new phase that we're entering in.
Every time I hear somebody say, "Oh yeah, I could really see him becoming a man," I picture somebody walking into a room, and I don't know if you know the Lord of the Rings trilogy, but in
Yeah.
number two, when they're walking across the plains, and the orc says to the other one, "What do you smell? Man flesh."
Yeah. Yeah.
Walk into the room, what do you smell? Oh, man flesh. It doesn't
I
smell
have
good, but
I have 3 boys. It's a lot of man flesh smells,
it's
as
a
you should.
lot of man flesh.
Yeah. Yeah. I wish I could teach these boys some aim. We just cleaned the bathrooms the other day. But
Oh my goodness, they're slobs, and it's like, have I failed in life completely as a human? Like, my favorite is when they're, okay, it's not complicated to take a dish, to
yeah.
scrape off the top of the dish, and to put the dish and the extras into the dishwasher, especially if it's empty.
Yeah.
And it's
Never
like,
gonna.
and you watch them walk towards where the dishwasher is with their plate, looking up at you like, what do I do with this now? Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on. Let me think back. You're right. I have never taught you to put this
Yeah.
dish into the dishwasher. So you clearly can't know what to do with it,
Yeah.
right? My goodness, it makes you just smack yourself upside the head sometimes. But But then they jump out and they surprise you, and it's like, oh yeah, well, I was thinking about this really important thing, and I've
Yeah.
decided that I really want to do this important thing. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, what?
Hmm.
Uh, you can't put a dish in the dishwasher, but you can figure that part out.
It's yeah, I remember these different podcasts I've listened to, and people will talk about like it's never been easier to be great. Like the standards have been lowered so much to
Yes,
just have good work ethic, and you're like king of the hill, right?
just show up.
Yeah, yeah, and I feel like sometimes in our house you can be so frustrated or been out of shape or maybe discouraged or sad, whatever word you want to use. We're like, okay, my kids are not living up to what I thought they could or should, and then you go out in public, and then you meet some of these other kids that don't have the parents that you and I are striving to be, and other people strive to be, or maybe they don't have the parents at all. The nowadays the family structure is so in disarray, they might not have anybody. Plus, they've been outsourced to the state, which we know who trusts the state these days after everything we've been through just in the last 5, 10, 200 years. Who do we
Well,
trust
then you talk
anymore?
to teachers of what is happening in schools, and it's like, I don't want
Yeah,
kids. What kind of stuff is that going to produce? We
yeah,
had a lady come up to chase me down. We were at the pool in Mexico, and the lady chased me down. And it's like, are you the parent of Miles? Yeah. What are you doing to him? And I'm like, this doesn't sound positive.
yeah, right,
Okay,
yeah,
I'll bite. What do you mean? That kid is like the most kind kid I've ever met, and he did this and this and this. Is like, we're not anywhere close to this. He's just going up to people. He loves being
yeah,
social. He's offering nice things, whatever. And so we got talking about it. And it's like, well, what do you do? She says, well, I'm a clinical psychologist
wow,
that deals with like kid and teenager
yeah,
people. And she's like, I realize that, I typically deal with the bad ones. But she's
sure,
like, we don't see
yeah,
kids that
yeah,
act like adults in public, that know to be kind to people over their own wants, that say please and thank you. It's like,
yeah,
it's not complicated things, but it
yeah,
takes intention, it takes repetition, it takes training,
mhm,
it takes time. And as you look back through it, most people are stuck working. They leave their house at 7:30 to get to work, be on time for 8:30 or 9. They're there till
mhm,
5 or 6. They get home by
yeah,
7:30. There's dinner. Dinner's chaotic. They got 25 minutes with the kids. Kids go to bed, and it's like you calculate through the week. You've got like 10 hours, maybe 12, with
yeah,
your kids all week,
yeah,
and then you've got 4 kids. Let's say,
yeah,
what's that? Two
yeah,
hours per kid on a.
mhm,
It's like it's sad, but that's the reason why you need to do things different than the world is telling you to do them, because the
yeah,
results that come out of it are different than what the world gives you, which is awesome because what the world's giving you sucks.
yeah, yeah, 100%. I had
So
a friend of mine I trusted about a decade ago. I remember asking him. So my oldest was 2, maybe Sarah was pregnant with number 2 of ours, my daughter. And I asked him. He had 6 kids at the time. He might have had more, but at the time I said, "Hey, you travel, you're respected." I respected him. I said, "You got 6 kids. How do you balance that? Like, how do you have individual time with them?" Because I was just curious from a purely knowledge. Like, I just want to know what you're doing. And he was really somber about it, and he took it very seriously. And he said one of the things he's implemented is every Friday night. He's a very busy man, but every Friday night he never has work, never has anything to do, and he takes one of his kids out for ice cream, just one of them. And
that's
he's
cool.
eating a lot of ice cream, small portions, but smart portions. But he has ice cream. And
Sure. Yeah. Good
yeah,
luck going for small
yeah,
portions.
yeah. He has individual time with each 6 of those kids. And that was fine. And then of course, I'm nosy, but I was asking, like, do you think that's enough? Like, are you? And it really, it really shook him. He was like, and he was really honest. He said, "I don't know." And he said something that was really profound to me. He said, the thing about raising kids is you never know if you did it right till it's too late to do it again. And he says, really, all you can do is prepare now and do the best you can. The problem is too many people wake up when it's too late and they don't plan ahead. So all these tools that I talk about nonstop, like AI and stuff like that, it just allows you to change, to close that delta from this is what I know I should be doing. This is how I can implement it. I wonder if there's a way to shorten that amount of time. Like, let me think of everything, think of all the things, think of the long term picture, and how can I actually implement some of these changes? And that's what the tools allow you to do. I mean, and we find that in a lot of ways. You find that in community, you find it in church, you find it in scripture, you find it in books, but now you can find it in technology too.
Right. Well, let's wrap things up there. I'm gonna say I'll put a link to all of Bud's stuff. But when I even had trouble getting him onto this podcast here because he's like, well, my requests what was it for AI speaking, but you kind of speaking engagements you doing now?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm super flattered because I keep opening my big mouth about this stuff. People stumble across this. It's how content works, of course. So I've had the opportunity now to speak at workshops. I've got some conferences coming up, a couple that I'm really proud of. And it's real fun. Maybe you can relate to this as a photographer. I've shot events, hundreds of conferences and things, and it's surreal to kind of get a peek behind the curtain. And now I'm not capturing the people on stage. They've asked me to be the person on stage. And
Right.
it's fascinating. All these old conferences that I've actually been the photographer for now, I'm reaching out and like, hey, do you need somebody to talk about this? And they're elated. They're so thrilled. So like I said, this AI stuff has opened up incredible doors across not just like industries and businesses, but also talks like these. I was invited to speak to a big men's conference. It was a big church religious conference. And they said, hey, I've spoken there before about, and preached and things. Like, no, we want to know about the AI stuff. Like, tell us that. It was so fascinating to talk in that situation.
So if you're interested in learning more about it, I'm going to put all of his link stuff in wherever it is. Now, if I'm putting it up in like this stuff in a lot of places, so if you don't see any links there, just reach out to me and I'll get you hooked up with Bud. But
Yeah.
he is an upstanding character, one of the nicest people that I know, the second most attractive person in this particular podcast,
There you go.
and
Two, baby, not two.
maybe not quite the farmer of gray hair that I am, but
I will say,
positive. So,
and this is kind of a break, if you will, or an exclusive. I'm in the process of streamlining everywhere you can find me because I'm sure you can relate to this too. I've got a million projects, even a million businesses and DBAs and screen names and usernames. Everything is going to be condensed to just Bud Gets Wiser. And that's going to be where you can
Bud
find me.
gets wiser. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I consolidated just this past month to No Fun Dave, and
Yeah.
that's where I am. But it's true. It's like I was walking through an airport, actually on the tarmac on the way out to the plane, while kids in tow, bags in tow, and this guy's like, "What's up with your hat?" And it's like, oh, I speak and I coach and I do online information on helping you get what you want in life, and he's like, well, where can I find you? And I just went, just
the billboard. Yeah.
yeah, and it's like it's memorable enough where it's like, oh, okay, yeah, well,
Yeah.
really, because
No, I love it, man.
when you're no fun, and that's just what you got to do.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate you spending an hour with us, and I'm sure we'll see you on here again at some point. And
Please.
dude, keep it up. Can't wait till
I'm excited to see where this goes. I'm excited, man. It's gonna be a lot of fun, Dave.
Me too. All right, thanks, bud. You don't have to hang up yet, but I'm going to stop the recording here in 3, 2.